talk about something that I fell in love with when I was either a graduate student in psychology or uh, maybe, no, I think it was a graduate student. When I first got introduced to her work, the lady's name was Karen Horney. She was a very, very well-known, world-renowned, actually, psychiatrist or psychologist in Great Britain, I think. She was part of what's called the British School of Object Relations, if you're a nerd about psychology. That's where they really started to study in the psychoanalytic tradition. They were looking at how relationships work and how people work in relationships. And she I can't remember the name of the book. Oh, well, but I do remember the system. The system that she used to help people with, and it's something I think you can relate to. There's a number of reasons why you might be one of these. There's three we're going to talk about, three types. Some of it, I think, is constitutional. You're born with it. You can go into a nursery, and if you peer through, when the babies are born in the hospital, they line them up in little burritos in the nursery. When they're not nursing, and all the little babies are look like an assembly line, and some of them are like happy with the world. There's ba 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 ba, ba, and they're just happy to be there, and they're all warm and cuddly, and then the one right next to them is like, they're like I always say they're the future attorneys of the world. But you got all types that come into the world. We're different temperaments, different wiring. Well, some of these types, I think, have, I believe, certain amount of it is how we're constitutionally wired in terms of where we lean. The other part of it is probably our experiences in life, things that have happened to us, things that have made being one of the other types or integrating the other type conflictual to you in some way. It's hard to be this because I would get hurt when I did that, so I started doing this. But who knows about the etiology? What's important is two things. Number one, I want you to be able to recognize um, these types of behaviors in yourself and others. And then I'll also want you to consider, well, maybe just because I'm wired to be more of this, I also need some of these other two. That's one of the problems, a lot of these typology things you see out there. Like, you have these type tests, I come up this and come up this. Well, you've also got those other parts to you that you need. And just because you load over on this side way big and high and strong and all of that, well, you might need some other traits as well to negotiate life. So I really believe in, even though we have a particular area of strength, that there's some other things we need to be a full, well-rounded person. Well, this is like that. What Dr. Horney said was that there's basically three modes by which we negotiate the world and other people. Three types of people, if you will. I prefer to say three types of behavior, not people, because we can vacillate, etc. The first one is what she calls the moving towards type. Now, what this means is in a relational setting or some other settings sometimes, but let's talk about relationships, that you tend to embrace people. You tend to move towards them. You tend to include them. You tend to like them. You tend to join them. And just hadn't met anybody you don't like, right? A little exaggeration there, but you're a joiner. Typically, they're affable and loving. I mean, loving people love people, right? And so they tend to move towards people. Now, I'm going to talk a minute about what you do in conflict, but they typically are an embracer, a hugger. You want to end a conflict, hug somebody, right? The second type, after moving towards, would be a moving away person. So that tends to be you're going to, people, conflict, unclear about situation, I'm gonna back up a little bit. Okay, sometimes we do that internally, sometimes we do it externally. But if something's uncomfortable, I tend to move away from it, okay, not towards it. And especially in conflict, moving towards people will try to please the other person. Moving away people will kind of get out of the conflict a little bit. And then there's our favorite, the moving against person. And that means not only do you move towards it, but you move against it. Like you're going to win this fight, you're going to overpower them. And it's a lot of times tinged with various kinds of aggression, sometimes anger. Aggression is energy, anger is a certain valence of that kind of energy. So, what we've got here is you put people together, there's a conflict. The moving against might get in your face and say, no, we're going to do it this way. The moving away might go, oh, okay, or be quiet or leave. And the moving towards, okay, yeah, that's great. That's fine. See, the moving towards is going to join you. Now, I believe that we need all three. I mean, if you go to some of my favorite verses, Proverbs says that the wise person sees danger and hides himself. That'd be a moving away behavior. It also says in other places that if your brother sins against you, go to them. That'd be a moving towards move. And then sometimes it says that we've got to be angry and sin not, but sometimes we've got to firmly assert a position or come against evil. I, take a security guard. Sometimes they're just kind of sitting back, take a bouncer at a bar. They're sitting back, and they've kind of moved away from the action. They weren't invited to the dance. They're not going to do it, but they're there. And then sometimes you see somebody in a situation or escalating or whatever, and they might move towards them and say, hey, dude, let's, they kind of embrace them. And at other times they might rush in and put an end to this real quick. So we need a toolbox. Now, if you're predominantly one, sometimes due to injuries or abuse or abandonment or whatever it is, somebody's had a lot of abandonment, they might really move towards moving towards because I want to cling. I don't want to let this person leave me, or I'm going to please them so they won't reject me. Sometimes conflict scares us, and we might just back off and avoid facing an issue altogether. And sometimes you might have if you can't join them, beat them kind of mentality, and you get aggressive and try to win every argument through force, compelling about your idea, overruling somebody. A lot of times these types look at each other across the room at a cocktail party and never met each other, and like magnets. They just attract each other, right? Because that kind of, opposites attract, that overgeneralization that sometimes is true. Oh, I feel so complete when I'm with you. Well, why? Because I'm half a person and you're half a person, and now together we make one. So we need all of these behaviors. Sometimes we need to run for cover. Sometimes we need to step into a conflict and move against whatever's going on and contain it. And sometimes we need to join and sit down and embrace something and either not fix something because it doesn't need fixing or just be together. So I want you to look at what happens when there's discomfort and conflict. If you're a moving away type, your growth step may be to not just do what's automatic, but I need to get over the fear and step in to the discussion, step into the meeting, step into risking my opinion. If I'm the moving against type, maybe my ideas would be a little more welcome and considered by others if I weren't so combative when I'm delivering them. Okay? And then the moving towards type, maybe you don't have to agree with everything. It's okay to hit pause and say, I don't really know I don't know if I agree with that. I'm not just going to join you and move towards everything you say and buy it, no matter what it's going to cost me. So I think a part of life in getting better is certainly to grasp your strengths, certainly to grasp your abilities and your default ways of doing things. But at the same time, we probably need some other functions as well. We need all these abilities. We got to move towards. We got to certainly move away from. Sometimes run for cover, and then we also sometimes have to push against something that's not good. So just watch for your style and ask yourself this question: was that helpful? Did that serve me or the other person or the cause in the best way that it could be served? What can I do that may be different? And what I need to do to embrace my fear and begin to be a little different. So it's interesting, if you see people, casual counselors, right? Most good friendships are giving good counsel to each other. And how many times is that counsel at the coffee shop? Well, I think you ought to tell him. Well, I don't feel, or you shouldn't allow that. You should step up and push against that. Or this person doesn't sound good. If I were you, I'd kind of take a break or back off. See, what you're going to hear in a lot of, friendship counseling offices is you're going to hear somebody giving advice of the other style that the person has omitted. So just do that for yourself and people you love. You see a moving away type, why don't you say, I notice a lot of times I'd like to hear more from you, or I'd like for you to join us and push through the resistance a little bit. Sometimes a moving against type, you might want to say, I'm interested in your ideas. If you could say them a little differently, I might be able to kind of hear them better. And then in the moving towards type, you might want to say, you agree with that pretty quickly. Or is there something about this you don't like? And help people call forth the other parts of